about the position. So today, we're going to be having a conversation today with Christine Jones of New England Flagger Services. She's hiring, guys. She's looking for flaggers. She's looking for people that can come out and work. But in order for that to happen, you need to be able to meet certain criteria. You need to be able to be very, very reliable. But before we get into that, I definitely wanted to transition and start talking a little bit about some of our ground rules. The reason why I want to start talking about some of our ground rules is because these ground rules will really help us have this smooth experience. As I was stating before, we're not talking over one another. So we're going to transition into the next slide to talk about our existing ground rules. So just to give you guys a heads up, this agenda is going to happen in 4 phases. Phase 1 is going to be really the introduction process, where I'm talking and kind of giving you guys an overview, giving you guys an introduction to who I am, the organization that I work for. Phase 2 is going to be an opportunity for us to really learn more about the job. I have an opportunity to introduce Christine. She can share a little bit with you guys about her story and help you guys understand the job that she's hiring for. Phase 3 is going to be really a Q&A session, right? It's going to be me asking you guys questions that are relevant to her experience. So if this is a job that's for you, make sure that you raise your hand and say, hey, Marcus, I have something I want to contribute, because Christine can hear that information directly from you. Phase 4, we're going to start talking about what's next. We're going to talk about the process going forward. I'm going to open it up for any questions that were not asked. So Christine have an opportunity to answer questions coming directly from you, and then we can talk about next steps. So as I was talking about before, today's group interview has rules, right? Similar to anything else. In order for things to go smoothly, there has to be rules to create structure. So a few things I am going to ask of you. I'm going to ask that everybody that's in attendance today, that they keep their camera on at all times, right? And as you know, for those of you who are familiar with Zoom, for those of you who are not familiar, the more light you have, the better people can see you, right? So the last thing I want is somebody sitting inside of a dark space. We can't necessarily see who's inside of that space, especially if they have something they want to contribute. So make sure you're in a place that has great lighting. Also, look directly into the camera when you're talking. Do your best to identify where your camera is located and look directly into that camera when you're having a conversation. As I stated before, if you're not contributing to the conversation, keep your microphone muted. As we know, in a space where there's so many people involved, last thing we want is for anyone to try to talk over someone else or to interfere with something that someone else is trying to say. So keep your mics on mute at all times. I'm also asking that you don't eat during this group interview, right? From the stance of professionalism, if you're having a traditional interview with an employer, you wouldn't bring a snack to that space. You wouldn't bring a soda. You wouldn't bring a coffee to that space. So be mindful of that same kind of etiquette. So I am asking that you don't eat or drink anything during this interview. Also, be mindful of just doing other private things, right? I know we're home. Some of us are home. Some of us may have children, but try to do your best to make sure that other private things are not happening during your interview. And last but not least, use the chat and the raise hand function. These functions are there for a reason. It gives us an idea of who wants to say something, who has something to say, so we can give them the floor to have that conversation. So as we begin to transition into the next phase, we're going to start talking about introductions. You guys might say to yourself, who is this guy that's talking to me on the screen? I've never seen him before. I'm going to introduce myself, introduce the organization that I work for, and talk about, what our role has been in this process to hopefully give you guys a bit more clarity. So, of course, my name is Marcus Cherry. Please do not laugh at the photo. It is not the best photo in the world. My name is Marcus Cherry. Who am I? I am the career director for CRI Work Ready. I will be your host for today. A couple cool things about me, right? I've literally have 10 plus years of professional experience in career development, just doing my best to make sure that people are able to get to wherever their ideal goal is. I do oversee CRI Work Ready programs and outcomes throughout the state. So my job is to oversee those programs in 5 cities, in Norwalk, in New Haven, in Bridgeport, in Waterbury, as well as in Hartford. Interesting fact about me, I'm originally from North Carolina. So if you hear a little Southern accent, right, don't be caught off guard. I like to think by this time it's kind of gone, but sometimes people still tell me they can hear it. And why do I do this work, right? Why am I here today? Because I'm dedicated to change. And the reason why I'm I kind of have capitalized all those letters because I don't think of it in a traditional way. To me, change operates as an acronym. It stands for choose having a new growth experience. And for that new growth experience, I want to see a new growth experience happen in the individual. I want to see it happen in the community. And I want to see that new growth experience happen in the system as a way for people to continuously become better at who they are and their direction going forward. So the organization that I work for, as I said before, is called Career Resources. Now, people might know Career Resources from the traditional standpoint as a nonprofit that helps individuals and families throughout the state become a better version of themselves, find a job, and maintain employment. The department that I'm working more closely with is the department that really focuses on recruiting and screening, working as a recruiting and screening tool for companies for open positions, right? So we identify talent for those vacant openings and then identify partners who we feel would be able to benefit from those talents, from the talent that we have identified. We like to consider ourselves an employee support partner. Our job is to ensure that there's success for all accepted applicants going forward. And the way that we do that is through our employee benefits. So each and every person who comes in contact with us gets a couple benefits, right? Especially if you find yourself working. You get career coaching for employees to develop their career pathway, to identify their roadmap as well as a success plan. There's also transportation services for new employees with limited access to transportation. In today's conversation, you will hear a lot of talk about having reliable transportation. It's paramount. It's paramount for you getting to and from work, and I'm sure Christine will speak to that a little bit later on today. But that's the focus that Career Resources plays in this department of work. Our job is just to make sure that you're as successful as possible. Now, as I was saying before, we've been lucky enough to be able to have someone come hang out with us today and talk about a position that's available. And the name of that employer is New England Flagger Services. And New England Flagger Services has been in business for a while. It's owned and operated by Christine. She was kind enough to come hang out with us today. How are you today, Christine?
Good afternoon, Marcus. I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And Christine has a really, really interesting story. So, we're going to, just share a little bit of information about her, let her tell a little bit about herself and then get into really what she's looking for in terms of an actual employee. So just a couple of facts that you guys should know before she began to share. She is the owner and CEO of New England Flagger Services, which is a company that started back in 2008. Now, one of the most interesting things I found out about Christine's work is that she literally went from 7 to 70 employees in a matter of 2 weeks. Like just grew just instrumentally, just out of nowhere. But what I value so much, about her is really her philosophy connected to work. And if you take a look at it, it speaks clearly to it. It says her deep experience in education combined with knowledge and behavior science and uncompromising emphasis on safety are what define the philosophy of her company and direct the performance of each employee. So thank you so much, Christine, for coming to hang out with us. So I don't know if there's anything, you wanted to share with everybody that was on the call about you, about New England Flagger Services before we get into the Q&A session. But I wanted to open up the floor for you to share anything that you'd like to share.
Thank you, Marcus. So first of all, I'm going to apologize if you hear a dog barking. I've done everything possible, but I'm helping my mom. I'll give you a little short story. My mom is 75. She just moved into a new home. That's where I'm at right now, waiting for the carpet guy to come. She is 75. She still works full time in a factory. And she's my role model. So I have to be here to help her out.
Got it.
As far as New England Flagger Services, like you mentioned, Marcus, we started the company in 2008. It's 100% woman-owned company. It's myself and my 2 daughters. I have lots of men and women that work for me. So my history before this company, I was a Montessori preschool teacher for many years. Going way back, I worked in retail. And way, way back, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. So as you are going to learn as you get older, everyone, and even you, Marcus, I'm sure you know that the more hats you wear, the more interesting, the more capabilities, the more marketable you become. So where life has brought everyone so far, It's creating you to be this wonderful person later on.
Very, very, very true. And I think that, you know, the best that any individual can do is diversify themselves with experience. You know, a lot of times people might only stick to what they know, but if you are courageous enough and confident enough to step out into the unknown, you can really unlock something in yourself that you never even seen possible, right? So interesting for me when I was learning more about your story, kind of learning how it just kind of just happened, right? You know, it really wasn't something that you had initially planned for. Like, you know, and if you guys ever have the time, just feel free to check out Christine's story. Like it's one of those things where you say like, man, like she never expected to see herself here, but she managed to become so successful. So again, thank you for that information, Christine. So we're going to transition into the Q&A session, right? And the purpose of this Q&A session, guys, is to help you guys understand the job, help you guys understand what Christine is looking for, help you guys understand what's been some pitfalls of previous individuals that are held this position, right? The goal is to really kind of give you guys this cheat sheet, right? Like this is something you traditionally don't get inside an interview. An employer telling you like these are some of the things that I'm looking for, and this is what I've seen happen. So my hope is that you guys have some notes, have a pen and paper to be able to jot these things down, because there's definitely going to be an opportunity for you to talk about how you add value, or how you would plan to add value on into Christine's company. So I guess the first question, Christine, that I wanted to kind of just ask you, like, just tell us, you know, a little bit about the position, right? What exactly are you hiring for?
So we are hiring what's called certified flaggers. If you have driven through construction zones and you see people with stop slow paddles helping the traffic go back and forth, those are called flaggers. In the state of Connecticut, you need to be certified to do that job. So you would attend a 4-hour training to get certified. I mean, think about it. You're dealing with traffic, you're dealing with irate drivers. You need to know how to handle all of those situations. In the state of Connecticut, they say that all you need is that 4-hour certification and you're good to go. I take it a little bit farther. On your very first day, you're going to go out with a seasoned flagger until you feel comfortable. I hire all over Connecticut. My company works all the way to the east, Thompson, Connecticut, all the way to Greenwich, Connecticut. So no matter where you live, you're going to fit into one of the companies that we do flagging for. I can't say you're going to get 40 hours. And here's why. A lot of it depends on my customer, but I will tell you that we are extremely busy. The odds of you getting 40 hours plus are perfect. It's kind of up to you. If I don't get a lot of reasons why you can't work, you're really all in, you're at the top of my mental list. So I'm going to call you first. That's pretty much how it works.
So you know, you really having a strong work ethic, right? Showing a lot of initiative to say, hey, if you have any extra hours, Christine, I'll take them. You being, you know, on time for work, you know, those are some of the things that open up the door for people to even work 40 hours or even more.
Right. So I'll give you an example. We recently just had a tropical storm come through, and about half of my flaggers had the opportunity to do storm work for Eversource. So they would work 16 hours on, sleep 8 hours, like that, back and forth. And if you were lucky enough to get the night shift, that was all guaranteed time and a half. So people walked away with some pretty big paychecks from storm work. So while a storm is unfortunate for many, it is good for a company like this if you're an employee here. Let me also add, Marcus, that we're an entry-level construction business. So while no one expects you to start below the beginning, it is the beginning, and there's lots of room and opportunity to meet other companies once you have some flagging experience. We work for a lot of tree trimming companies. They're always hiring. You know, there's connections to be made, so to speak, once you get that experience.
Got it. Sounds like a valuable opportunity, right? Okay, thank you so much for that question. And I think that, you know, it really gave a lot of clarity to people who kind of didn't have, you know, any true idea exactly what a flagger is. My next question to you, Christine, is what characteristics are you looking for in a candidate? What kind of have folks stand outside and say, you know what, that person right there is the ideal person that I'm looking for? Have a lot of the characteristics I look for in somebody I'm looking to hire.
So when I do a lot of in-person interviews before COVID came along, um, I'm looking for someone that's a self-starter, someone that can work individually. We're definitely here to guide you, to mentor you. And by the way, we consider mentoring help you to reach that inner hope within yourself. That's what we call mentoring. We're going to help you to succeed, but you have to want to. You have to be willing to start at the beginning. Um, there's criteria like you have to be 18, you need a valid driver's license and your own transportation, things like that. But as far as characteristics, are you ready to just do what it takes to get a fresh start, to get a start, and move on farther? If you have those characteristics and you can get up on time, I'm somebody's mother, but I'm not your mother. So calling you in the morning saying it's time to get up doesn't work. And I'm only telling you stories that actually happen. So just being responsible is important.
Makes sense. I mean, because, especially because of how early the position could start,
Yes.
you definitely got to have that sense of self-motivation to be able to make the adjustment, account for traffic and the like, so you can come in, do the job to the best of your ability. So for those of you guys who were listening, she really just told you what you need to be successful. She really just told you what you need to set yourself aside or apart from everyone else. So thank you so much for that, Christine. So my next question that I have for you, is just to kind of help guys understand like what some of the issues have been previously. Like, what has been some of the on-the-job issues you've experienced, since you started New England Flagger Services?
Mm-hmm. Well, on the job issues, normally it's a good day. Let's just say it that way. But there are things that happen because you're working with the general public. So the odds of you getting flipped off, I'm just going to say it how it is. The odds of you getting flipped off while you're standing there or yelled at are pretty good. So that's one of the issues. And you have to be able to let that roll off of you. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to be able to let that, don't take it personally and just let it, you have to find that fine line. I apologize for the dog. In the training, we talk about that. We talk about how to handle situations like that. If you're sharing a car, I'll give you an example, sharing a car with your spouse or your girlfriend, and they need it to go somewhere, then you can't go to work. That's a huge issue for us. Not giving us notice that you need time off. We work a lot with folks that have probation officers, parole officers, and they have appointments that they need to keep. So we work around that, but we have to know. So the biggest issues are honestly one word: communication. Communication is huge. Not just communication out in the field, but communication with management as well. And again, in the training that we offer, we cover communication like crazy. You're going to walk away knowing exactly what to expect. And I'm going to know what you expect and what your situation is. It works both ways. You have my back, I have your back is the best way to explain it.
Makes sense. And it sounds like, a lot of those situations could be avoided by, having a lot of those characteristics that you were talking about in the beginning. But in the event that, an individual does find themselves in a bit of a situation, the best thing they can do is communicate clearly on the issue sooner than later, and then figure out the best way to troubleshoot it.
Exactly. And, we're very understanding, Marcus. We bend a lot, but at a certain point we have to go, we really need to fix whatever the issue is.
It makes sense 100%. So guys, Christine literally just gave you guys information on what you need to be successful. So what we took the liberty of doing was just giving you guys a quick brief overview, right? Just so you know, like, what is she looking for? What are some of the conditions? What is the certification about? As you can see, if we talk about hours, we talk about work environment, just so you guys have a general idea of what's built into this position. So, and Christine, if I'm missing anything, please feel free to add it, but you need to be 18 and over, right? You need to be 18 and over. You must be able to understand and implement instructions. You're going to be guiding people. You're going to be using these controlling devices to signal directions that people are going to be going through. If I also heard you correctly, that certification is extremely important, right? So you need to be able to have that certification that allows you to even be on that work site in the first place. You also need to be willing to travel for work. Because if I'm hearing Christine right, you need to take into account, hey, I need to be wherever I need to be. So if someone else was supposed to be able to use a car, if I'm sharing a car with someone else, that kind of situation may not work out because you may not report to the same location every single day, right? The hours and from what I understood, the hours could start as early as 7 a.m. in the morning. Christine, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We actually have a night job going on tonight, which is rare, but that could be an opportunity as well.
Wow. So then it even goes beyond 8 o'clock. Okay, perfect. Environmental conditions, guys, right? This is an outside job. So you must be able to communicate clearly with background noise, machinery present, right? Things are happening on the road. So you need to still be able to communicate with those things happening inside of the background. You need to be able to move and maneuver quickly to utilize escape routes. Last but not least, you need to be able to withstand all outside working conditions. Rain, sleet, snow, hot, cold, right? You need to be able to withstand those working conditions. And for you all, like, again, my hope is that you guys are taking notes and saying to yourself, like, this position really, really speaks to me and I can meet all of those demands Christine have been asking about. So as we transition, right, as we begin to open up the floor, this is going to be your opportunity to showcase your skill set. As I told everybody on this call before, you'll have an opportunity to answer questions. Christine is here. She will hear everything you say. However, in this specific segment, these questions will be asked of you, and the expectation is that you provide an answer to these questions. Now, again, because we have so many people in here today listening and hearing this valuable information, please utilize the hand raise function, the chat function to say, hey, I have something to say. Now, what I want to state clearly to everyone, I may not have enough time to get to every single person that has their hand raised or want to ask a question, but no, I do have a remedy for that, and we will get to that remedy later on at the end of the group interview. So again, as I ask these questions, and you have something you want to contribute, something you want to say, because this is your opportunity to stand out, raise your hand or throw your hand right inside of the chat. I'll call on you, I'll take the appropriate time, and then we have to transition on. Know though, each and every person will have an opportunity to kind of answer the question at the end of this segment. So I wanted to transition into the first question. So the first question that I have for you guys is to give me an example of when you had to work without supervision, right? Give me an example of a time when you really had to show that initiative, show that self-supervised mindset, and then tell me about the outcome. Tell me about the outcome. What happened when you had to self-supervise yourself, when you had to be the leader and take your own direction? All right. It looks like we have Leslie raise her hand. Please unmute your mic, Leslie. Talk to us. Like, tell me about a time when you had to work without supervision.
Well, recently, like about 3 weeks ago, I volunteered in the food giveaway. So it was very, very hectic, very hot, and everybody was just everywhere. So
how did you
went
navigate?
back there. So I went back there. So I saw everybody was everywhere. You know, you had to get milk here, get milk in the box. You had to break boxes up and throw them in the bag. You had to get the eggs in the box. You had to get the fresh produce in the box. So I went back there and, you know, I took initiative, took it upon myself to regulate. And I put, you know, I asked everybody, was it all right if, you know, if I suggest that everybody, you know, takes a certain part, you know, and they didn't mind. So, you know, I had somebody on the milk. I had somebody on the fresh produce. I had somebody breaking the boxes. I had people on the yogurt, and I created my own, you know, my own little, what do you call it? My own little work, my own strategy. And so when I created that strategy, everything just came, and like everything was much easier. Everything was much easier and not as hectic. You know, I had one person on, you know, on one thing, and it worked out very well. The line picked up, you know, people, you know, the line started moving faster.
Got it. So then it sounds like you took initiative, Leslie, and you made everybody else's job a whole lot easier just because of how you strategize to get the job done. So thank you so much for that feedback and answering that question. I also see, you know, Joseph wanted to share his thoughts on the question as well. Joseph, tell me about an example when you had to work without supervision.
Hi, everyone. So up until June of this year, I worked at a museum. I don't know if you guys have ever been. It's in New Haven. It's the Peabody Museum. And so working there, I eventually was given the position of a museum fellow. And so I was pretty much, I only had one supervisor and I was like a shift supervisor whenever I was there. Like those were my responsibilities. And, you know, at the museum, we have these days where admission is free. And, you know, our job is to pretty much make the information more accessible to people who don't read academic language a lot and, you know, things of that nature. And so I, instead of being on the floor educating, I, alongside my supervisor, had to make sure everyone had the materials they needed, because it's a museum, you know, we have kid stuff going on with crafts and whatnot. And it's a very small museum, and there were hundreds to almost 1,000 people there, and there's only 3 floors in the museum. And so my supervisor ended up hyperventilating, and he was just panicking, and things were running out. And I was just like, Avery, well, y'all don't know him, so it's okay. I was just like, Avery, just sit at your desk. He had a desk fan. So I was like, just turn your fan on. And I got it. And I ran downstairs, and I, you know, there was one other person besides myself who was a museum fellow. And so I took her out of her station. I was like, Jazz, we need to get this together. And so we just gave Avery that break. And I told Jasmine, I was like, you handle the 3rd floor, because there's more people up there. And I got the bottom 2. And we just did what we needed to do, because it was more of a matter of, you know, it was just more things to get done because there were more people. There was nothing new or different to get done. And my supervisor was just panicking in his office. So I kind of just had to like take his position for a little bit and like thank everyone and, just handle it. And everything went well.
Good. Good to hear. I mean, because, you know, there definitely will be those times where you have an opportunity to show, you know, that unspoken value, right? And then there is no other way to identify initiative outside of seeing it at work, right? We all like to think, you know, I take the lead. We all like to say, I don't have any issue leading, but when the rubber meets the road or when the opportunity comes, not everybody steps up. So it really sounds like you stepped up, Joseph. It really does. Thank you so much. So it looks like, and again, this question goes out to everybody, right? If you have an example of when you had to work without supervision, I'll do my best to get you in. I know we have a lot of people showing interest, but at this time, we do have to transition on into the next question. Again, feel free to answer. We're going to follow the same model. Raise your hand if something that you wanted to contribute, or drop your name right inside of the chat box. So my next question is, tell me about a time when you had to work in difficult working conditions, right? We heard Christine talk about this position is outside. We heard she said, hey, you know what? You might find yourself getting flipped off, right? So somebody talk to me about a time when you had to work in difficult working conditions. How did you manage that? What did you do? Is it something that you was like, you know what, I thrived in? Or if it's something that you're saying, you know what, this was a struggle for me. And I see you guys raising your hands and I greatly appreciate it. I have William who just stated that he wanted to chime in on this question. So William, talk to me. Tell me about the time you had to work in difficult working conditions.
I was a flagger down in Florida for a construction company called Ranger Construction. And we had to work, and it was raining, pouring down rain, and directing the traffic, which is kind of dangerous. And the way we got to work, they will use a van, take us to different sites. And now when I got to the site, I was given instructions of what I needed to do. So they left, and I'm there, I'm doing the job. And when you got pouring down rain, sometimes it gets hard to see, and you got to be careful with the traffic and directing the traffic. So I at first it was a struggle at the beginning, but then I got used to it, and it became a natural thing for me.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the interesting things about the body, William. You know, it's a lot more resilient than we believe it to be. So if you put yourself through it, you can get through it, right? But it's about you taking that step and going through the process of enduring it, and then you learn so much about yourself in the process as well. So thank you so much for contributing. I see the hands, guys. I see you guys wanting to share. Ned, I see your hand up. Talk to me. Tell me how. I mean, tell me about a time when you had to work in difficult working conditions.
Yeah, so one time I was working at this restaurant bar, and the building was fairly old, and all the supplies, all the liquor and the meats and everything were down in the basement, you know, and so we had to run down there and get some. And this was during a tropical storm, and so since it was an old building, the wall had holes in it from the water was just flowing in. So the whole basement was flooded, but I still had to go down there because customers was there, and I still had to go down there and get supplies and stuff. So I just everything was floating, like all the supplies, napkins, you name it. But the kegs since the kegs were heavy, they didn't move. So I actually place boards across the kegs and spread the kegs out and place boards around it so I can get to the supplies and to the walk-in cooler to get the meats and stuff like that.
Wow. That seemed like a lot of work, Ned.
Yeah.
It seemed like a whole lot of work, man. But again, you know, it goes back to what Christine was talking about, taking initiative, taking it on yourself to get the job done. You know, difficult working conditions are not for everybody. But some of us have the ability to be resilient and push through it. So thank you so much, Ned, for sharing. It looks like, you know, Leslie's back at it again. She has something else she wanted to say, Leslie. Thank you for standing up again to contribute. Because again, I say to all you guys, it's your opportunity to talk about your skill set. It's your opportunity to talk about your value. So Leslie, talk to me. Tell me about a time when you had to work in difficult working conditions.
So I was working in the kitchen, washing dishes. And again, it was hot, it was muggy, and it was hectic. We had attitudes and animosity flaring, and everything was moving at a fast pace. So one thing about me is that I never limit myself, and I always remain humble. As well, I'm a very hard worker. So I remain focused, and I humbled myself, and I focused on my position, and I just got the job done.
Got it. Sometimes you got to just put your nose down and just keep moving forward, just keep moving forward. So thank you so much for that, Leslie. I greatly appreciate it, guys. Again, sorry if I cannot get to you. Sorry if you have your hands raised up. We do have a time commitment here. So I'm going to shift into the third question. And our third question speaks to something kind of that Christine was talking about before in relation to motorists. So this is a situation, if you've never worked as a flagger before, I want you to put yourself in this kind of scenario, right? Put yourself in a scenario where you're outside working, you're trying to guide the traffic, and some people just are not listening to what you're saying. They're just not following your directions, right? I want you to tell me, how would you deal with the motorist that refuses to follow your direction? How would you help them kind of stay the course, even though they might say to themselves, I got an easier way to do this, or I don't feel like waiting? What would you do in that kind of scenario? And this, I throw it out to everybody, whether you've been a flagger or have not been a flagger. Try to put yourself inside of that mindset of saying, how would I navigate through this? And then do your best to answer the question. Again, guys, I see your hands. Thank you so much. I see Joseph. He has his hand raised. So Joseph, talk to us. How did you handle the motors that didn't want to follow your directions?
So I've never been a flagger. So I'm just gonna go off of my intuition, I guess. First, I would just want to say that after having training, I'm positive that there's going to be things that I've been told, ways to handle situations, specific to the job, I guess. But that aside, I personally would probably one, get their license plate down, because they're probably at that point, if they kept not listening and maybe even went to go do it, I would need to have their license plate, because that's most likely breaking a law at some point that I'd have to report. And two, I would probably just try to try to explain to the person like, this is the flow of traffic right now. Like, it's not the most convenient, but in the grand scheme of things, it's the safest for everyone. And if they don't listen anymore, hopefully they're not trying to run me over. If they don't have the gut to run me over, I'll just stand in front of them, quite frankly, until like I got some support. That's the type of person I am. Not gonna lie. But if they were a little overzealous, of course I would have to move the way. But I would just try to de-escalate and just calmly explain why, like, even if there genuinely may be like another path, as you said, or what have you, is what we're doing to maintain safety for everyone.
Got it. Thank you so much for that, Joseph. I mean, because of course, we all haven't been in that kind of scenario, right? All we can do is say to ourselves, like, this is what I believe that I would do, right? And the hope is that if we given the opportunity to go through this certification, that it'll guide us, right? How do we navigate inside of that space? Because it's likely something that most of us haven't encountered unless you've actually had the position. So I definitely appreciate you stepping out and saying, you know what, this is what I believe I do, right? Whether it's right or wrong, but this is what I think I would do in that kind of scenario. So again, I definitely appreciate it. And like, this goes out to everyone else, if you guys, just put yourself inside of that scenario. What would you do inside of that situation? There is no right or wrong answer, but I think your ability to critically think in a time of need is an important characteristic for you to have as a flagger. And I see Leslie saying to herself that she wants to share her information. She wants to tell us what she'll do about what she would do if she was in this individual scenario. So Leslie, talk to me. Like, what would you do if you had to deal with a motorist that refused to follow your directions?
Well, I'm here. I'm sharing my my device with Mercedes. So this is Mercedes. She wants
Okay.
And after that, I can go if you don't mind.
Okay.
So basically, I will remain calm and not feed into their energy, and just continue to do, what I have to do to try to keep the situation under control.
Got it. Makes sense. Trying to control the situation. I appreciate it, Mercedes. Thank you.
So I would try to communicate. I would try to communicate with the motorist and try to give them as specific instructions as I can, as firmly as I can, and as clearly as I can, and as continuously, as firmly and clearly as I can, to try and keep the traffic maneuvering at, a normal and a safe speed.
Got it. I appreciate it. I'm gonna take one more, and again, I'm sorry guys if I wasn't able to get to you, but I'm gonna take one more. William, talk to me. Like, what would you do if you was in this situation?
Well, basically, Mercedes said something very good to keep the situation control. But yeah, okay. But one thing I would not do definitely is get in front of the car, moving vehicle. What I do, they gave us whistles. So when you blow on the whistle to get their person's attention, if they decide to keep on going, like somebody said, take the license plate number down. That's well good. Take the license plate down, because it'd be a dangerous situation. But if they do stop and you walk up to the car and you explain to them that there's a reason for that precaution.
Makes sense. Just kind of just helping them understand that it's a reason why you telling them to follow this specific direction, right? Safety is the most important. So thank you for that, William. I greatly appreciate it. So guys, again, I apologize if I wasn't able to get to you. We do have a time restriction here, so I'm going to transition into the next phase. So this is a time where I really talk to you guys about what's next, right? You've had an opportunity to hear from Christine. We had an opportunity to ask questions. You had an opportunity to answer questions that was relevant to her work. This is my time to kind of tell you guys what's next, to give you an idea of how this process is going to go moving forward. So as it stands right now, this here was a group interview experience, right? Where we had an opportunity to get to learn more about the position, to learn more about the expectation. Our next phase is going to be paperwork submission, right? In order to officially be considered eligible for an opportunity, an employer needs your resume, right? They need certain documents that showcase your ability to work, showcase the qualifications and the like. So our next step is going to be connected to paperwork submission. After that, right, there will be an opportunity for those that are selected to transition into a flagger certification training, where you have an opportunity to meet directly with Christine, go through the flagger training process, and be officially certified as a flagger. It's very, very likely that there will be some paperwork that has to be processed in the meantime. But ideally, if you fit the criteria, if all works out well, then you will be given an opportunity to work. So I hope that process makes sense to everybody. So you understand what your next steps are, because as we transition into the next slide, I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask Christine a question, right? And again, we're staying true to the same model. Use the chat function, use the ability to raise your hand. If there's something specific you wanted to ask Christine, something you wanted her to be a bit more clear on, or a question that wasn't spoke to, this is your chance to do so, right? So if you do have a question you would like to ask Christine, raise your hand, throw your name inside of the chat box so Christine can do her best to answer the question for you. As it stands, remember guys, we want to definitely be mindful of keeping your mics muted. I see already we got hands raised, so I greatly appreciate it. It looks like Joseph has a question for you, Christine. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Hello, Christine. How are you?
Hi, Joseph. Nice to meet you.
So I have a quick question. Through the whole COVID thing, I have to support like my family, and so I actually could not like afford a car. And so while I was working at a distance, I just Ubered. And so I was wondering if, and so what I would normally do is I would Uber and schedule them ahead of time and make sure that the arrival date is at least 20 minutes before I'm supposed to be at work. So even if there's like traffic or whatnot, I'm still there. I was wondering if that would be okay until like, after working some time, I could get myself another car and whatnot. Cause that's like kind of where I'm at. And that's like the only thing that's my only concern. Like I love the outdoors. I want a job outside. But I just at the moment don't have a car, but I'm willing to like Uber myself to and fro anywhere in the state. Cause I've done that. Cause I live in New Haven and I go to Eastern, which is in Willimantic. So I've done the distance traveling a lot.
Okay, that's a great question. And by the way, I love the answers that you gave to all the questions as well. I love the answers that everyone gave. Everyone seemed very self-motivated, able to solve a problem. I know I'm going off track really quick, but you can take negative energy and make a positive out of it when you're out there, which sounds like that's what all of you did. So we do have a rule that you have to have a vehicle, but let me explain why, and then add something else to it. A lot of times the contractor will do work here for like a couple hours and then move on to the next spot, and you need to follow them right away. So there's not time to get an Uber and get to the next spot because they just take off and you have to follow them. Another reason is for safety. Like I don't want you ever, and this really did happen where a guy said he had a car and didn't have a car and was left out there when the crew left and it starts a thunderstorm. You're kind of, I'm still watching out for you at that point. If something were to happen, I don't even know what I would do. So that's why we have that rule. That being said, Marcus and I and some other people in this group are trying to organize another way to get this done. So I'm not going to say not having a car is off the table. We're still working on pieces that we don't have an answer to yet. So I would say an Uber would not work, but we're working with maybe people getting dropped off. And I'm not really sure how to explain it because we're in the process of trying to figure it out. Not everyone has a driver's license. Not everyone has a vehicle. And that a lot of folks that really want to work and are eager to work. So that being said, we are in the process of working on that. Does that make sense? And am I clear about why we require this? Like it's for safety more than anything else.
Got it. Thank you so much. And it seems like by Joseph's mannerisms that it seems like you answered this question. I know that, we definitely had someone else that wanted to ask a question. I know William stated that he just had a question for you really quick, Christine. So
Okay.
William, floor is yours.
Yes. What about you got a criminal history?
So great question, William. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that about 90% of my employees have a criminal history. We work specifically with a lot of folks that, I guess the term is reentry right now, where you come out of prison or jail and you're trying to get a fresh start. Earlier, I had mentioned that we work around PO appointments. When folks have POs, I have them give me their PO's name. So I can reach out, introduce myself, let them know you're working for me. And, you know, we want to build a good relationship so that it's successful for you as well. So yes, you are welcome. That is not a hindrance.
All right, thank you so much. And William, it really seems like they answered your question. Like we got someone else. Leslie had a question for you as well, Christine. And after this, guys, I'm gonna take one more question. And again, just because of time, we got to wrap up. But again, as I said before, you know, you guys have an opportunity to get additional questions asked. Leslie, the floor is yours.
So what should us people that doesn't drive or does not have a license, what should we do for now? Like what's the next step?
I would suggest that you go, you can either go through Marcus or on my website, fill out an application online. In the note, put that you are part of this group. Where it says if you have a license or a car, you would put no. But I would keep your application until we can solve this problem. I don't want to just say the answer is no, Leslie.
Okay, and Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cool. At this time, I know, you know, we do have folks who have questions. And again, I apologize if your questions were not answered. What I do want everybody to know is, because I know everybody might be super eager saying, how do we contact Christine? You know, can we call her? Can we email her? Because of the relationship that Christine has with us, right? As I talked to you guys before, going back to the first slide when I talked about who is Career Resources and what role we're playing to this partnership. Our job is to make sure that the folks we transition over to Christine meet her criteria, that they have the appropriate documentation in place, so she can kind of just seamlessly bring you guys right into the fold, right? And this next phase that we're about to go through is going to kind of open that door up to give you guys an opportunity to transition into the next step. So with that being said, if you guys take a look at the chat, what I'm going to drop inside of the chat is an actual form. The purpose of this form is going to be used for you to, one, answer a lot of the questions that Christine brought up, right? In terms of your ability to qualify. Do you qualify for the job? Does this fit with what's happening with you inside of your existing life? Just like Christine spoke about, we are talking about, hey, how do we navigate in terms of making sure people who don't have cars get appropriate transportation? That's still in the process. I want to make that clear to everybody. That's still inside of the process, right? But we do recognize that people do want to work, and that we want to do our best to put people on the actual work site. So if you take a look at the link that's inside of the description, before you leave today, before you click the log off button, it's extremely important that you complete that form. That form talks about how eligible you are for the job, right? So you complete that form. When you submit that form will go directly to me. That form will come directly to me to help me understand what the answers to your questions were, how well you fit, and then to talk about whether or not we're transitioning you to connect with Christine to go through the certification process. In that form, it also asks those questions that we asked during the Q&A session. If you didn't get an opportunity to answer, those questions are inside of the form as well. You have an opportunity to share what your answer would have been, so Christine can actually see it. She can see, you know what, this is what this person would have done in this situation. This is what that person would have done in this situation. And in terms of, your actual identification, whether that's an ID, driver's license, social security card, those things that means you're eligible to work. Those would be things that we connect with offline to collect from you to put together a package to be able to transition over to Christine. Now, what I will share with you guys, in the event that someone you know was not here today, they were not able to make it because of a doctor's appointment, and you think that they will qualify, feel free to share with them that link. They would still have to go through the eligibility process, make sure that they're fit before we transition them over. So what I am going to ask everybody to do is to click on the link that's inside of the description and go through the Google form and complete it. Now, if there's anybody here that happen to have any issues completing the form, issues accessing the link, I have a team of support members here that will be able to support you and work with you through the entire process. I want to do my best to make sure that everybody completes it so everybody can transition into a potential next phase, right? So again, if you have any issues completing the document, raise your hand. We will make sure we connect you with somebody that can help you work through the link so you will be able to submit all of the appropriate paperwork to make you eligible for the position. Does that make sense to everybody? My hope is that makes sense. So with that being said, right, while you guys are going through the process of completing a Google link, I wanted to kind of just transition into the next space. I wanted to thank you guys for coming to hang out with us, taking the time, sharing information about who you are, the value that you bring. And the hope is that, you know, we can really connect you guys to start working. Christina is very flexible. She's doing her best to work with us inside of this process. So do us a favor, fill that information out. If you know of anybody else that you believe will be eligible, share it with them. They still have to meet with us. But I wanted to thank you guys for coming. I wanted to thank Christine for taking the time, you know, because I know she has a super busy schedule. She has a million things she has to do, but she made the time for us. So Christine, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. I wanted to thank my team in the background for just working, right? Just doing their best to make sure you guys had all access and support you guys need. And I don't know if Dr. Clark or Rob Hebert's here, but I wanted to thank you guys for just opening up the door for us to even make this possible, right? Without your leadership, without your guidance, without your connection, opportunity, none of this experience would have even been possible for everybody that was on today. So Christine, if you can hang out for a brief second, we're going to jump into a separate breakout room, talk for a couple minutes. But everybody else, fill out that form. Once you fill out that Google form, feel free to say goodbye. I'll be following up with you guys just to make sure that we're all on the same path so we can talk about next steps. All right.